Xenoblade Chronicles is a JRPG epic released by Nintendo on the Wii in the early 2010s, which features vast environments, deep battle systems, and an intricate narrative. I played it for the first time last year, and one of the first things that struck me is that while the game is excellent in many regards, its visuals were undoubtedly held back by the Wii hardware. While the vistas and environments still hold up pretty well, and the art direction across the board is fantastic, characters, and specifically faces, were really lacking in clarity, and more often than not looked profoundly ugly. I found that the visuals hindered my ability to emotionally connect with the characters at times, in spite of the great voice work and writing. I also found the music to be somewhat lacking instrumentally, as the game had a bit of an over-reliance on synthesized elements. After I finished the first Xenoblade, I was both impressed at what Monolith Soft had been able to achieve on such underpowered hardware, but also left wishing that the game had been developed for a more powerful system so that the visuals and audio could be realized in a way that matched the quality of the game itself. Literally a week after I finished Xenoblade Chronicles, the definitive edition was announced in the September Nintendo Direct. They didn't show much, but it was evident that the visuals had indeed received the upgrade they sorely needed, and that there would be additional content in the form of the Bionis shoulder, an area cut from the original Wii release. While it initially was a bit unclear, having played through the game completely, I'm pretty confident in referring to this as a remaster. While the visuals are certainly better on Switch than Wii, a lot of the elements are still quite similar. The environments generally have better textures, and the improved lighting and visual quality allows the vistas of the Bionis to really shine, even though you can oftentimes tell that many of the assets were originally created for the Wii. The main characters have all new faces and hands, but the rest of their bodies seem about the same apart from improved textures. These altered elements in particular hugely enhance the game, as the new faces are all far more expressive and readable than ever before, which serves to massively enhance the storytelling. Watching cutscenes was a totally different experience in Definitive Edition. The visual quality now matches the ambition and grandeur of the story. The style of the new faces is slightly different from the originals, but I personally found it fit very well into the world of the game and makes the aesthetic more consistent with Xenoblade Chronicles 2, so I don't really mind it. On the other hand, most of the background NPCs look just about completely unchanged, which is not really preferable. Also less than ideal is the resolution, which runs at 720p in docked mode and 540p in handheld. On the TV, the game looks decent with this resolution, though 1080 would of course be preferable, but the sub-HD resolution in handheld made this way of playing pretty unappealing to me, so I'd recommend sticking to docked. The game also does technically have resolution dips, though I didn't find these to be at all prevalent. In terms of audio, the upgrades have been equally as significant. For one, much of the music has been remastered and contains re-recorded elements, making for much more high-quality sounding tracks. I found the environmental music to be the most upgraded, while cutscene music is also improved, albeit less comprehensively, with some songs still using a few too many synthesized elements for my tastes. I do wish that there had been a more consistent effort to re-record all the music, as the lack of live recorded instrumentation in some of the tracks stunted their emotional impact for me. While I wish the music team had gone a little bit farther, the soundtrack is still undoubtedly great and is overall an improvement. Another major upgrade is the quality of the game's voice clips, all of which are much clearer and less compressed than ever before. Many of the other sound effects in the game unfortunately still sound like they were made for the Wii, creating a bit of an odd quality juxtaposition when listening to the soundscape. Footsteps and rain sounds, for instance, still sound Wii quality, which contrasts with the comparatively high quality music and voices. The UI, on the other hand, has been completely redone and works great. Menus are very clear and easy to navigate and are more visually appealing. There have also been a few gameplay tweaks, some of which have pretty major ramifications. Other notable minor additions that I enjoyed are HD Rumble, which is quite well implemented, and Video Capture, which is all new for a Xenoblade game on Switch. While the visual and auditory improvements are great, I do wish that Monolith had done just a little bit more to mask the Wii-like elements of Xenoblade Chronicles for the definitive release. With that said, having a version of this game running in HD with updated textures, music, and characters is absolutely wonderful. Xenoblade Chronicles was one of the Nintendo games most in need of a remaster, so I'm really glad this was released. I found the quality of Definitive Edition's gameplay to be far superior to the Wii version as a result of one pretty major change: quest tracking. In the original, I had no motivation to complete the game's multitude of side quests, as I simply found the process to be unenjoyable. A majority of the quests require you to defeat a certain kind of enemy or to collect specific items. But since there was no easy in-game way to keep track of what was needed, I neglected this aspect almost entirely. This resulted in me being underleveled for pretty much the entire duration of the game and struggling to make it through many of the boss fights. While I probably should have realized that you are intended to complete side quests throughout the game to collect EXP and gold, and would have had a more enjoyable experience had I done so, the absence of guidance made me lack any incentive to try to complete them. This was not the case at all in Definitive Edition, as a result of the fairly robust and all-encompassing quest tracking features. Icons on the map now clearly display where quest-related enemies and items are. This edition made quest completion far more approachable and enjoyable to me, and improved my overall gameplay experience substantially compared to my first playthrough on Wii. While I wouldn't say that the side quests in Xenoblade are amazing, they do provide a good excuse to explore the beautiful, vast environments and look for secrets, something I hadn't really done that much before, and are certainly a preferable method of acquiring experience points to the hours of grinding I did in the original. One somewhat unfortunate detail is that there is still no way to track the Colony 6 reconstruction quests, which is a bit unfortunate and made the process of completing these missions less appealing. The other fairly major gameplay addition is to the battles, and while it may seem minor, it too served to increase my enjoyment. The game's battle system takes place in real time, where characters auto-attack enemies, and revolves around the use of different arts, essentially special moves, that each of the characters can perform, many of which can be chained together to inflict status effects on enemies. It was sometimes unclear which I was supposed to use at what time in the original, but thankfully this is no longer the case. An exclamation point now appears on an art at the opportune moment to use it, which provided much needed guidance and clarity to me, and greatly improved my experience battling enemies. I also really enjoy that you can now choose your character's clothing independent of what they actually have equipped, so you can play through the game in whatever equipment you see fit. Challenge battles have also been added. This new element isn't particularly revolutionary, but it does provide even more content to enjoy. In addition to these gameplay supplements, 2 new difficulty options have been added, though neither appealed to me specifically. There's casual mode, which should be great for newcomers, and is something I wish I had for my first playthrough, as well as an expert mode where you can manually control the levels of each of your party members, which I didn't personally feel a need to dabble with. Apart from that, the gameplay is almost completely unchanged, and that's not a bad thing. The game's vast collection of systems such as gem crafting, affinity charts, art customization, and equipable gear are still enjoyable. The first time I played through Xenoblade, all of these different options seemed a bit daunting, but on replay I've come to appreciate them and their utility much more. The battle system remains fun, as is exploring the game's huge environments, so keeping these elements intact is fine by me. The story in Xenoblade Chronicles is pretty incredible. The game takes place on the long dead body of a continent-sized titan known as the Bionis, which was fatally wounded in a battle eons ago with another titan, the Mechonis. Several thousands of years later, the Homs, the people of Bionis, are now under threat from the Mechon, a force of machines sent from the Mechonis to destroy the Homs. You play as Shulk, wielder of the Monado, a legendary sword that allows him to see visions of the future. This story element is one of the major focuses of the narrative and is cleverly weaved into the gameplay through a battle mechanic, wherein Shulk can foresee an upcoming enemy attack and is given the opportunity to prevent it. Many other playable and non-playable characters are introduced throughout the duration of the game, each of which with their own distinct personality and role to play. The characters are all very memorable and well acted, and are fantastically animated in many of the cutscenes, though sadly there are about as many in which characters retain their awkward Wii-era animations. I'm so glad Xenoblade is no longer restricted to the Wii. The graphical upgrades and increased character expression allowed me to appreciate the cutscenes far more than before. The story remains intriguing and impactful throughout, and has tons of great twists and turns. Xenoblade Chronicles is thematically cohesive, and the world and characters all fit perfectly together to form the narrative. The hours near the end of the game are especially fantastic, The way in which the story gradually unfolds to explore legitimately profound concepts is incredibly well done. Xenoblade Chronicles has one of the best stories in the entire medium, outdoing even its own sequel in several instances. The narrative is, in my view, by far the strongest aspect of Xenoblade Chronicles, and it would be worth playing the game for the story alone if it seems at all interesting to you. Future Connected is an epilogue campaign which takes place 1 year after the events of the main game on the Bionis Shoulder, and features Melia, Shulk, and the all-new characters Kino and Nene, who are Riki the Noppon's offspring. First off, the fact that Monolith included an entire additional mode with over 10 hours of content is commendable, since an HD remaster of Xenoblade Chronicles was already enough to make this the definitive version of the game, so Future Connected really is just icing on top of the cake. The story of Future Connected is focused on Melia, with Shulk and the Noppons being supporting characters. Melia had a great deal of misery incurred on her in the main game, and Future Connected serves to provide a bit more closure for her character. The two new Noppons, Kino and Nene, are sickeningly cute.
Cannot abandon hope.
And though they might be a bit much for some people, I personally enjoyed the duo. The story itself isn't particularly complex, but it is effective enough and does its job as an epilogue. It's great to hear some of the voice cast from the original make a return 8 years later, with Adam Howden and Jenna Coleman reprising their roles as Shulk and Melia respectively. Both their voices have noticeably changed a bit with the passage of time, but that's somewhat unavoidable and it's not a big deal really. Unfortunately, there were a few details about the campaign's cutscenes that bothered me slightly. For one, almost all the flashbacks in Future Connected are still images for some reason. This felt kind of cheap, and I'm not sure why they opted for this since it doesn't look all that great. The other issue I noted is that on several occasions the subtitle text doesn't line up with what the actors are saying, and it's a bit strange that these errors are as prevalent as they are.
Let's clear a path. I agree.
In terms of gameplay, Future Connected carries over the formula from the main campaign with a few alterations and additions. The most obvious change is that the chain attack move, activated by chaining together arts in the main game, has been replaced with the Union Strike. This special attack can be activated by recruiting the various pawn specters strewn across the Bionis Shoulder, of which there are several. There are 3 different variations of the attack, and the animations that play for them are pretty amusing. I enjoyed the pawn specters, though this change is hardly revolutionary since the Union Strike serves an almost identical purpose in gameplay to the chain attacks it replaces. Apart from the addition of pawn specters, several gameplay systems have been removed or streamlined. Equipable gems can now be collected directly from ether deposits without the need for crafting. Enemies no longer drop equipable gear, and the affinity chart is totally absent. I didn't really mind the removal of these features as they streamlined the gameplay experience, and given that Future Connected is so short compared to the main game, they likely would have just served as a distraction. One change that I did really like was the replacement of heart-to-hearts with quiet moments. In the main game, heart-to-hearts are short, unvoiced cutscenes, which are unlocked when 2 characters' affinity reaches a specified level. I enjoy the heart-to-hearts quite a bit, but the lack of voice acting and gating behind affinity has always made them somewhat unappealing to me. In comparison, quiet moments are unlocked based on your progress in the story, and are both voiced and more elaborately animated than heart-to-hearts. I much preferred the quiet moments as they felt much more like proper cutscenes and allowed me to connect to the characters to a greater degree. The Bionis Shoulder itself is a joy to explore. It's fairly large and is one of the more tranquil environments in the entire Xenoblade series. The concept of taking a test level and fleshing it out to be a whole secondary campaign is quite clever, and adds even more value to the Definitive Edition package. Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition is almost exactly what I wanted in an HD remaster of the 2012 Wii game. The improved audio and visuals are what this title always deserved, and go a long way to enhance the experience. The gameplay flow has been made far more approachable and streamlined, allowing for more ease of access to newcomers to both the Xenoblade series and JRPGs in general. The new epilogue campaign provides even more story and gameplay content, cementing Definitive Edition as one of the best value games on the Switch platform. The amount of content is absolutely vast. While it does have a few shortcomings, by and large it's a massive improvement over the original. I fully recommend this game to anyone with any degree of interest, regardless of whether you've played the original or not. Definitive Edition lives up to its name, and is truly the best way to play this modern masterpiece.